In today's episode of RPG Maker being used for something it probably shouldn't, let's play a side-scrolling platformer bullet hell RPG based on a classic fairy tale. What could go wrong? My name is Graeldon and I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order to find the hidden gems among the piles of garbage, and today's game is 1/2 Red Riding Hood. Let's begin. Little Red Riding Hood is a classic children's fairy tale that's been told for generations upon generations, and as with any classic tale, it's had its fair share of variations over the years, but ultimately the core of the tale has remained the same. Sweet Little Red Riding Hood is sent by her mother to take a basket full of goodies, usually baked treats, to her grandmother's house in the woods. Along the way, she meets the big bad wolf who warns her that her grandmother is actually a powerful witch that has kidnapped the king's daughter and trapped her in her basement, and now she needs to follow the guidance of the forest animals, explore an underground ruin to find an anti-magic sword, and then defeat the evil grandmother and save the kingdom. Or something like that. All jokes aside, we've seen plenty of instances where reinventing classic fairy tales has produced fantastic results, and in the same way that Shrek manages to blend together multiple classic stories, 1/2 Red Riding Hood blends together game genres into a terrifying concoction that also looks as though it may have come directly from Shrek's swamp. Okay, so it's not actually that bad, but I wasn't joking about the genre blending that is happening here. There is a certain element of impressiveness to knowing that this game was made in RPG Maker, an engine that was designed with one purpose in mind, and that purpose was most definitely not the creation of an action combat bullet hell platformer game. And yet, here we are. As with most RPG Maker games, we're greeted with a pretty standardized menu and options, but at least the background appears to be custom artwork. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely some stock assets being used throughout the game, but as you'll see, for better or for worse, there are quite a few pieces of custom game assets, but as a result, they're pretty easy to spot due to the clashing art styles. We begin the game as Little Red Riding Hood in a tutorial zone of the forest. Fun fact, this is the only time that Little Red ever faces the screen, so admire this sprite because you're never going to see it again. The same can be said of these grey statues that provide the tutorial in text form. These aren't seen in the main game either. Here you'll learn the basics, how to move, interact with things, jump, dash, and even attack. But not really, because you don't have a weapon yet, so pressing the attack button does nothing. Pro tip for game developers, if you're making a tutorial for the player to learn the controls, don't ask them to press a button that should do something, but currently does nothing. Most people will think that it's broken. If you teach me how to jump, I expect that pressing the button will make me jump. Instant feedback tells the player they did a good thing and that they should do more of it. If you tell me how to hit something and then pressing the button does nothing, I'm going to be thoroughly confused. This first area is actually designed rather well, as you need to have a decent grasp of the movement controls to jump over the first gap and proceed. As opposed to the earlier rant, this is actually an example of good tutorial design. It sets the expectations for the player and prevents them from proceeding until they've managed to put the fundamentals to use. So, taking inspiration from a well-known journalist playing Cuphead, I failed this jump several times before proceeding. In a neat touch, there is actually a secret chest hidden in the water in the first area, which you can only obtain by getting the first weapon from a nearby chest, which I feel compelled to point out is trapped, which tells you everything you need to know about the difficulty level of this game, and then returning here to slash the vines. This gives you a black hood, which is a cosmetic override that cannot be unequipped ever, and provides no additional bonuses. So this game is now 1/2 Black Riding Hood, but we'll continue to call her Little Red because I'm pretty sure that the alternative would get me banned. Gothic Cloak acquired, we can exit the water by clipping through a wall to the right, swimming up and then clipping back out again. No, really, you have to do this. Because of the water physics, you literally cannot make the jump out of the water and back to the platform we dove in from. No clue if this is the intended solution, but it's the one that works. Finally, to exit the area, we need to put our new weapon to use and destroy the giant meat wall that is blocking the path. Yes, that's right. The first enemy in this game is a giant meat wall. After exiting the area, we get a brief piece of exposition which explains the general premise and that Little Red Hood has the strength of 10 men for no apparent reason, and our first task, which, true to the original fairy tale, is to take a basket of goodies to our grandma in the woods. As the second sign of the brutal nature of this game, you might notice that we haven't been healed from the damage we took from the trapped chest earlier. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Leaving our house, we see a floating platform that is just out of reach, and then continue on until we meet this cute little monkey who teaches us how to move interactable objects by bumping into them to give them a push, or jumping onto them and picking them up Super Mario Bros. 2 style. In the next area, we bump into this nightmarish creature that is apparently a giant rabbit who we'll call Larry, who gladly takes the giant carrot off our hands and promises to be our friend forever and ever, and will help us out whenever we need them to. Entering the next area, we're treated to our first rounds of combat as we need to defeat the nearby enemies that have trapped a friendly squirrel called Omar. So let's take a look at how combat works, because one half Red Riding Hood uses action combat, and as you can see here, the best descriptive word for it is unwieldy. Enemies will hurt you on contact, and your sword has a fairly limited attack range, so bumping into enemies by accident while attempting to land a hit is pretty common. It also turns out that it's possible to land critical hits, but I have no clue how the crit chance is calculated. If you figure it out, let me know. After killing both enemies, Omar is delighted and rewards us with a special marble before carrying on with their day. Having made our second animal friend, we continue to the next area to find the first and only checkpoint in the game, which is most definitely not a Final Fantasy crystal because there aren't any borrowed ideas here whatsoever. I'm not kidding though, this is the only save point in the entire game, and you'll see why soon. Moving onwards, we reach an impassable cliff, so it's back to Larry we go to ask for their help, and they kindly allow us to use them as a platform to continue onwards. In the next area, we have some spikes to navigate, and then this lovely demon-looking fella. You'll also notice some floating hearts that are one of 2 healing items in the game. These hearts will only recover 5 health at a time, which is nowhere near enough to save me from being instantly KO'd by the demon. This is when I learned that the game also uses a checkpoint system, saving your progress whenever you pass into a new area, which is a fantastic touch, and I can honestly say that without this feature, I doubt I would have been able to finish the game. Given how tough this fight seems to be, I opt instead to avoid the demon altogether, only to be thwarted by an impassable red crystal. Well, so much for that. Thankfully, with the use of a few well-timed dodges, the demon proves to be fairly easy to kill, and we can continue on our way. We've now made it safely to our grandmother's house, where we can pass by the 2 nearby guards, one of which is asleep and the other which is drunk, and head inside to provide our beloved granny with our precious delivery. She rewards us with a small bag that will help us when we're in trouble, and then tells us to head home. In a neat twist, you're now expected to navigate backwards through the level, in the dark, which makes predicting where platforms, and more importantly spikes, are quite a bit more difficult. We're almost immediately blocked by an insurmountable cliff, but thankfully Larry quickly comes to our rescue again. They also warn us about an evil witch that lives nearby, and tells us about the cool and strong hero of the forest, Sir Repon, who saved all the forest animals from hunters. He's super cool. With that, we've completed the first chapter of the story. Chapter 2 begins back in Little Red's house, where her mother tasks her with delivering another basket of goodies to her grandma, and also warns us not to talk to the forest animals because it's hard to tell when they're telling the truth and when they're lying. Heading out, the first few areas are the same as before, but upon reaching the cliff where Larry helped us the first time, he's noticeably absent. Seemingly stuck, Little Red decides to open the bag from her granny and discovers a magic carpet. The carpet is the final mechanic we get access to, and Little Red can summon it by pressing either up and attack or down and attack to create a platform either above or below her position that will disappear after a few seconds. Now, I just want to reiterate that I am not a game dev, so I don't 100% know what is involved, but considering that this is RPG Maker, that actually seems kind of impressive. Perhaps as a side effect though, it is somewhat buggy, and there were instances where the platform vanished sooner than it was meant to, but overall the dev has done a great job of working it into the platforming. Sadly, the fact that it is 1 tile in size, combined with the generally floaty and slippery controls, means that it can be a pain to utilise effectively though, but that can be said for any small platform in this game. Having access to the magic carpet means that we can grab that chest back by the house, and inside we find the first of 5 soul shards. As far as I can tell, collecting all 5 will unlock an alternative ending, which is pretty neat. However, the final shard is given to you at the start of a new game plus, meaning you need to beat the game twice to see the fourth and final ending. You heard me right, this game has 4 different endings. I got 3 of them, but not the final one that requires the shard, so if you do play this game and unlock the ending, feel free to leave a comment below with what happens. Or, you know what? Even if you don't play the game, feel free to leave a comment anyway with whatever you think the 4th ending might be. Continuing onwards, we find that the forest has shifted and changed as we end up in a new area, which in my opinion is the single worst area of the entire game. At the beginning, you need to wait for a bird to arrive and then jump on its back to be transported to the other side. Once you get there, you'll climb down a ladder to find a second meat wall that cannot be harmed with your current weapon. So instead, we head over to the left, jumping over several bottomless pits and then one final one that also requires scaling a cliff with the use of the magic carpet. This jump requires a level of precision that is a bit ridiculous, and failing here sends you all the way back to the start of the area. You can try to jump down instead of taking the long way, but there is falling damage, and a fall from that height will kill you instantly. I decided to try anyway and discovered a fun little trick where dashing into a wall slows your fall just enough that you can trigger the tile that moves you to the next zone, which saves your state and then takes the damage afterwards, meaning that while you will appear to die on screen, you will respawn with full health in the next area. It's pretty neat and saved me a lot of time in the long run. From this point onwards, there's more platforming, more spikes, and more floating skulls and bullet hell mechanics to avoid. And avoiding them is the best thing to do, as they are typically either positioned just out of reach or move in an erratic way that makes them a pain to try and kill. Plus, there's no experience or leveling system, so in most scenarios it's simply not worth the time and effort to try and defeat them. The level also becomes significantly more maze-like, and this is where the ability to backtrack can become a double-edged sword. Because the levels need to be navigated in both directions, you'll sometimes find yourself back at the start of an area by mistake, which feels pretty terrible, as it usually happens right when you've almost finished the area. Regardless, with enough trial and error, you'll eventually find your way to a cute little rabbit who is starving. Little Red kindly offers her a snack from her basket, only for it to be revealed that it's actually viscera, and the rabbit flees from her, accusing her of being one of the witch's henchmen. But we were warned that the forest animals might lie, so surely it's nothing to worry about? The next area takes us back to Granny's house, where we drop off our basket of goodies. Being wary, Little Red asks to see the contents, and is confused to see that they are indeed cakes and muffins. Perhaps the rabbit was playing a trick after all. Little Red's grandma then gives her a small basket of flowers that should help her feel comfortable when exploring the forest, and with that, it's once again time to head back. The trip back home is uneventful, at least until we find Larry again. This time though, instead of chatting with us, he simply growls and roars at us. Confused, Little Red decides to just carry on home, only to be stopped at the door by the appearance of the big bad wolf, Sir Repon himself. Instead of a conversation though, as with Larry, Sir Repon also just growls at Little Red, who then turns to run inside. Sir Repon immediately goes all anime and teleports behind her, snatching the flower bag from her at the same time, and suddenly, they can converse normally again. He goes on to explain that her grandmother is an evil witch and has kidnapped Princess Sophie and is keeping her trapped in her basement. Little Red, of course, doesn't believe him, so he suggests she goes and checks for herself. And with that, the second day ends and chapter 3 begins. From here, I'm going to skip over a few bits and pieces as the bulk of the game consists of the platforming sections, which only get worse than what we've seen so far. Instead, let's focus on the plot. The next day, Little Red bumps into Larry again, who is now speaking normally, so it seems that Sir Repon may have been telling the truth after all. Larry mentions that Sir Repon has asked him to retrieve the heart of a phantom horse, so Little Red kindly offers to help him out because reasons. This day actually follows the same path as the previous one, but in an area that was just a long, flat stretch before, there is a mini-boss to fight. Here we start to see the full extent of the bullet hell mechanics, and the horse has way more health than necessary. That said, once you learn the attack pattern, you can basically complete the fight without ever taking damage. Horse heart retrieved, we move on to the next area, which magically teleports us back to the start in order to give the heart to Larry. We then teleport all the way back to Granny's house. It's not explained how this happens or why we can never do this again, but at least we didn't need to do the entire level again this time, so I'll roll with it. When we arrive, Little Red's grandma is actually asleep, so we sneak past and find the entrance to a hidden room, and inside is the Princess Sophie, fast asleep. We're unable to wake her, but Little Red's grandma finds us here and explains that she was tasked by the king with breaking the curse on the princess. We tell her about Sir Repon, and she suggests we try to trick him by giving him an enchanted golden bracelet. We don't know what it does, but it'll presumably help us somehow. Once again, we make the journey back home, and once again, we're stopped by Sir Repon, who warns us that he plans to kill the witch, our grandmother, tomorrow, and he'll also kill us if we get in his way. With those words, he vanishes, leaving us to head home. We're in the fourth and final chapter, which means now is a good time to skip to the verdict by going to the timecode on screen if you want to avoid any spoilers. The final day begins like any other, being tasked by our mother to take a basket of baked goods to our grandmother in the woods. This time, though, we're immediately confronted by Sir Repon after leaving, and forced to decide if we're going to help him or help our grandmother. If we choose to help him, he gives us an anti-magic poison that he proves won't kill anyone by drinking some of it himself, and instructs us to use it on the baked goods to trick the evil witch. We're also given the option of giving the bracelet to him, which he will accept regardless of the first choice you make. The combination of choices you make here will determine the ending sequence you get, but before we can have that, we need to make our way through the forest. We're stopped early on by the reappearance of Omar though, who drops a mysterious key before running away. Using this key, we find our way into an ancient underground crypt, and after navigating our way past even more spikes, traps, and moving bird platforms, we come face to face with another mini-boss. This one is a bit more challenging than the horse was, and a bit more annoying as it's able to teleport and can end in a position that you're unable to reach and are forced to wait around for it to move again. After defeating the Wraith, we move to the next area and find Omar atop a giant statue. Little Red accuses Omar of intentionally dropping the key to lure curious wanderers to their death and threatens to report him to Sir Repon. In response, Omar tells Little Red where to find a powerful weapon and then flees. Good riddance, you jerk. After grabbing the Mage Slayer, a mystical weapon that creates an energy beam when attacking, we make our way back to the surface and continue on to complete our delivery. The rest of the journey is largely the same as before, with an alternative route available if you kill the second meat wall that we were previously unable to pass. This second route is filled with even more traps, like falling stalactites and bouncing ninja stars. Yeah, I too keep an eye out for stalactites when I'm hiking through a forest. Arriving at her grandma's house, we head inside and complete our final delivery. Poisoned or not, she will eat them right in front of us, saying, "Good cake, delicious cake, hot red cakes. I eat them slowly, each by each." It's probably a translation error, but it's somehow much more creepy than one by one. Suddenly, there's a noise from outside, and the guards alert us that Sir Repon has arrived. Heading outside, we can see the mutilated corpses of both guards, and Little Red's grandma and Sir Repon facing off against each other. If you chose to use neither the poison or the bracelet, Little Red's grandma will overpower Sir Repon, killing him instantly. She then heads inside and completes the spell, and we see Princess Sophie awaken and Little Red's grandma slumped on the ground. The king celebrates the return of his daughter with a massive feast, and it's implied that the princess has become something of a glutton, eating more food than anyone would expect. Presumably, the granny has taken over Princess Sophie's body and is now living out her best life. If you chose to help Little Red's grandma and also use the golden bracelet, the scene changes slightly, showing Sir Repon seriously wounded by the guards before he's then defeated by the granny, and the same scene as before plays out. If you used the poison on the baked goods and didn't use the bracelet, Little Red's grandma notices something off with the baked goods but eats them anyway, trusting innocent Little Red. When confronting Sir Repon, her magic fails and she's swiftly killed by him as he picks her up by the head and then devours her whole, absorbing her magic into himself. He then transforms into the ultimate magic warrior and then proceeds to attack the castle on a mission to wipe out all humans from the world. Not a particularly great ending either. So, the third ending happens if you use both the poison and the bracelet. Neither Sir Repon or Little Red's grandma are able to get the upper hand, but they both realise they were betrayed and tricked by Little Red, and instead turn on her. One accuses her of being incapable of being a hero, and the other mocks her for being a half-witch and unfit to be part of the family. What happens after that is unknown. As I mentioned before, there is a fourth ending hidden away for someone other than me to find, and maybe that ending has a more positive outcome. For now, it seems that whatever path poor Little Red takes, the story is doomed to end in tragedy. One Half Red Riding Hood is an ambitious game that uses an ill-suited engine to blend together a combination of genres which in the right hands could work well together, but ultimately come together to produce an unwieldy creation that was formed from the best of intentions. As I said earlier, the sheer courage to attempt creating this in RPG Maker feels like it should be applauded, even if the overall result is lackluster. It's the kind of game that I would recommend people take a look at simply out of curiosity, while knowing that it's not necessarily a good game. It's akin to watching a car crash in slow motion. There's a certain amount of morbid curiosity to see just how deep the rabbit hole goes. That said, while it's certainly ambitious, the reality is that the end product has terrible platforming mechanics where everything feels like it's made out of ice. It's built around the ability to perform jumps after walking off the edge of objects, which feels incredibly unnatural. The combat system is poorly thought out, and even the bullet hell mechanics aren't ever truly used to their fullest extent. Add on top of that a bunch of stock sound effects, one music track for the title, and one music track throughout the entire rest of the game, and multiple translation errors, and you have a very, very rough final product. The twist on the classic fairy tale story is well done, and the addition of multiple endings is something that isn't seen too often and should be celebrated, but it's like adding sprinkles on top of a piece of thoroughly burnt toast. It might make it look slightly better, but it's still wholly unappetizing. I don't want to discourage the dev from making games, but I do want to encourage them to try different game engines. Side-scrolling action combat games with RPG mechanics are plentiful, with one of my favourites being Dust, an Elysian Tale. Moving away from RPG Maker allows for much more fluid movement and combat. If they still wanted to include bullet hell elements, sure, but the overall combat needs to be greatly improved. I'd recommend including a shield ability that blocks damage for a few seconds and ranged attacks for the player as a start. There's a lot you could do with the inclusion of a magic system, as well as by creating a better mid-battle healing system, because as it currently stands, if you start a battle with low health, you need to play pretty perfectly to be able to win. Overall, it simply feels like a game that did all the training required for a competitive race, and then shot itself in the foot as soon as the race began. And that's why my final rating for One Half Red Riding Hood is a golden bracelet out of 10. Just like how the bracelet blocks magical abilities, using RPG Maker blocked any chance of success for this game. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. Today's Larry was sponsored by Azazel. You could also become a sponsor by checking out the membership options below. As always, a massive thank you to all the channel members on screen for supporting the channel, with a special thank you to our two Knights of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline and Loveheart Gonzi. Lastly, I want to thank you for joining me on this weird gaming adventure through the depths of Steam, and if you've made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game. Until next time, take care.